Alright, let's talk about a brand that's been catching strays for no reason lately. Well, there may be a couple of reasons. We're talking about Bremont. Since the rebrand and the logo change and the change of personnel, it feels like everyone has written them off. But I think they've quietly, especially this year, made some of the best British watches in the game right now. Today, I'm looking at two recent models that genuinely have impressed me. And look, Bremont, straight off the bat, if you're watching this video, send your boy some of these models because I would love to review them. And I think these two models that I'm going to talk about today might just make you rethink about Bremont altogether. The two models in particular are the Altitude MB Meteor and the Terra Nova 38. But before I do get into it, and if you are new around here, I'm Jag from Jag's Watches. I post 3 times a week. And if you are into watches, make sure or consider subscribing, liking, and hitting that bell icon so you don't miss any new content on the channel. And if you're a returning viewer, welcome back. So let's talk about the elephant in the room. Let's talk about that logo change, because I can totally understand if you were invested in this brand prior to the logo change, why you are feeling a bit frustrated and let down. It was a risky move. I think any brand changing their logo, changing their, DNA to a certain extent, it's very bold and it's a huge risk. And let's be honest, let's talk about it. It hasn't been received very well. And I think that's been perpetuated by a lot of YouTube personalities. People like myself that, don't band together, but they all kind of share the same opinion. And I get it. I think some people are talking about how the brand has lost its identity. And I'd argue it hasn't, because the new releases still have that design. But keep it 100% honest on the channel, I wasn't really too invested in Bremont prior to that logo change. So if I'm looking at two of the logos now, the font as well, I have to say I probably do prefer the older font. But as I've mentioned, I am a bit of a fan of the new models they've been releasing. However, I would like to say, I think people have been so distracted by this new logo, by the new font, they didn't notice the watches themselves. And I do think they were getting better and better, more refined, more wearable, and more serious. And that leads me on to the first watch, talking about wearability, the Terra Nova 38. This is something which is clearly vintage, inspired by the World War I era field watches, but reimagined in 904L steel. We know that this is a steel that Rolex uses and is so critically acclaimed in the watch world. It's got a 38mm cushion case with a slim 10.7 profile with the tapered lugs. Now, I'm a huge fan of the shape of this watch. I don't own a cushion-shaped watch just yet, but I do really like this. I like the way that it's shaped. I would love to get hands-on with it. The 38mm for me is a bit of a sweet spot. Between 38 and 40mm, I feel like that is the sweet spot for me personally. It's got the brushed and polished combo finish, surprisingly defined. And I say surprisingly because it's a watch that costs around £2,900. Now, it's still a sizable amount of cash, a lot of money. But if you compare it to what else is in that sort of bracket, which we'll go into in just a second, but I think it's a decent value proposition. It's got the oversized push-pull crown with the Bremont's new Wayfinder logo. And it's got the full block, which I think is a bit of a contentious topic about this watch. The full block superluminova numerals. I absolutely love them. Some people hate them. Let me know in the comments if you are a fan of these Arabic numerals. I really do like them. Not only because they're actually very practical in low light settings, very, very much for a purpose. Clarity, the legibility of this dial, I think second to none, and hopefully you guys can agree with me because of how big the numerals are on this dial. Some people I know absolutely hate them. I am a bit of a fan because, again, it gives you that vintage aesthetic that I absolutely love. The movement is a B36AL with 38 power reserve. I honestly didn't think I would like this watch, but as I said, it being 38mm, the 42mm I think would be a little bit too big for me, but I think this is just a sweet spot. I think it's full of character. I think it's recognizable. I think as a tool watch on a NATO strap or on a steel bracelet, I think it gives it that classic military issued vibe without feeling like it's a bit of a cosplay watch. And if you're a loom junkie, this thing glows like a lighthouse. So that's the first model which I am genuinely very impressed by and love to get hands on with. I'm going to move on now to another model. It's the Altitude MB Meteor. This is Bremont really going full tech nerd, and I'm here for it. It's named after the Gloucester Meteor, Britain's first jet fighter. 42mm grade 2 titanium case, lightweight and durable. This is a proper tool watch in my opinion. Re-engineered with a triptych case, slimmer with shorter lugs for comfort. It's got dual crowns, winding at the 2 o'clock, and a roto click inner bezel at 4 o'clock. So something a little unique that you don't see often. It's got the BB14 automatic movement with 68-hour power reserve, 24 joules, shock-mounted anti-magnetic open case back with a Faraday cage, new titanium bracelet with quick release and super smooth articulation, so you can swap out with the fabric, NATO, all that kind of stuff makes it nice and easy. The knurled DLC barrel is still here. The lollipop seconds hand with the ejection seat pull counterweight is still there, which I really like. I'm a sucker for those small details, and I think this is a great addition to the watch. The original version of this watch also had that, and I think it's a nice, unique detail to this particular watch. It's everything that the original MB stood for, as I mentioned. Just a little bit more refined, I think, less bulky, and I think a little bit more wearable. This is one of the most purpose-driven watches I've seen lately, and one of the few that actually pulls off the tough tool aesthetic without being obnoxious. I think it's a great tool watch. I think it ticks many boxes. It's around that £4,000 mark, which, again, it's not cheap. You know, I've always talked about how you have to be very careful about how you spend your money in this game. But it's quite clear to see that in the second-hand market, Bremont does lose quite a bit of value. So it's worth looking at, I think, in the second-hand market. It dropping about 20 to 30%. Then it does become a very good value proposition, in my opinion. I do actually want to briefly mention the jumping hour they released this year at Watches and Wonders. Several other brands did this. We know that the Cartier came up with a jumping hour. Personally, I wasn't really a huge fan of the jumping hour aesthetically. Not really someone who ever looked into getting one. But I do think that the Bremont's version of the jumping hour is actually a solid choice. It's got that Terra Nova case. It's got a really nice black dial. There's a couple of different variations. And if you are looking for a jumping hour watch, I do genuinely think that this is a great choice. It's nice to see a brand experimenting, and I know changing the logo, changing the font, etc. was a huge risk. And I think to a certain extent it did backfire. But I think it's only a matter of time that new fans of the brand will start to appreciate that actually these are some really good watches. And particularly the fact that they're all made in England, you know, I think speaks volumes. I don't think there's many brands that are doing, or British brands that are doing this in the same way as Bremont. So I do feel like it's worth having a look at if you are in the market for a tool watch in particular. So let's conclude. I understand the rebrand was clumsy, the new logo divisive at best. But if you're going to let that stop you from appreciating what Bremont's doing now, I genuinely think you're missing out. The engineering, I think, is serious. The design language is still there. Yes, very much different, but I do think it's unique, and I appreciate that. The build quality, especially on the bracelets and the cases, is up there with the big Swiss brands. These aren't value watches, and I've mentioned that. They're still very much expensive watches, but I do think they're legit tool watches with British guts and personality. Let me know what you think in the comments. As always, I'm very much interested in yourselves. What you think about Bremont. Do you think that these watches are worth considering? Do you think the brand is worth considering after the rebrand? If you were an old fan of the brand, let me know why in particular you are no longer a fan, or if you are starting to appreciate their new watches. If you've enjoyed the video as usual, please do like and subscribe. It really does help the channel grow. And if you've watched the video to the end, as usual, thank you so much. I've been Jag from Jag's Watches, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.